you're a manager or a leader, then you will inevitably find yourself having to make decisions with less than complete information. In this video, I'm going to explain why this is, why it needs to be that way, and what you should do about it. Hey, how's it going? This is Scruffy Leadership, a YouTube channel about management and leadership aimed particularly at software engineers. My name's Ben, and I've been a leader and a manager in the tech industry for over 25 years. So what's the idea behind this video? Why do I say managers and leaders need to make decisions with 5% of the information? Okay, think of it this way. Imagine a member of your team needs you to make a decision, and in order for you to make that decision, you insist on being given 100% of the relevant information. I think it should be obvious that in that situation, the report could have just made the decision themselves because they'd have all the necessary information. It doesn't matter maybe exactly what's included in that 100%, but for our purposes, let's imagine that it includes things that aren't really possible to know, like how will other stakeholders react to the decision? Will the decision work out well? So if we take those away and that leaves us with, say, 50% of the relevant information, then the only difference between you and your report is that you're probably more empowered. In other words, your seniority means that you're allowed to make that decision, even though there isn't total certainty about the outcome. But if you're needing 50% of the information to make the decision, then there's no difference between you making the decision and you saying to your report, you make the decision and I'll back you up on whatever you decide. So this is why I say that as a manager or leader, you need to be ready to make decisions with 5% of the information. If someone comes to you and tells you the situation they're in and says, I need a decision in order to proceed, what should I do? There's a few possible ways you could proceed. First, you could ask the report to go away and come back with more information. This is sometimes appropriate, but for the reasons I've mentioned already, you can't push this too far. But also, if there really is a tight deadline and they need your decision quickly, waiting for more information might just not be practical. Second, you could refuse to make the decision. There aren't going to be very many situations in which that's appropriate, honestly, but there will be some. For example, if you've been working with your report on improving their decision-making abilities and you think this is one of those decisions they really ought to be able to make, then it might be reasonable for you to say, actually, I'd like you to make this decision. Another situation in which you should not make the decision is if it's something where it's not your decision to make. It's an HR decision, for example, or a decision that needs the approval of a particular person, such as your manager. The third option, which is going to be the right path a lot of the time, is for you to make the decision. You will likely want to ask some questions, perhaps get the information you have up from 1% to 5%, but then you'll need to make a call. If you're fairly experienced, you might not find this too hard to do. Your gut feeling will have been tuned by years of decision making to be able to feel whether a decision is reasonable or not. But if you're new to this kind of thing and you don't feel at all confident about it, then the first thing to do is to find out what the deadline is. Does the report really need a decision right now, or can you go away and think about it? If there's time, your best course of action might be to go and discuss it with someone else, someone you trust. You don't need them to make the decision for you, but you can use them as a sounding board and perhaps have them sense check the decision you're leaning towards. One thing here though, don't allow yourself too much time. If all you're going to do is ponder on the decision, the chances are that not much will change after the first hour or two of pondering. So it's not unreasonable to promise an answer tomorrow, but I'd avoid asking for a week to make a decision. If there isn't time and your report needs a decision right now, well, then you're going to have to take the plunge. This is where you're going to have to put some faith in yourself and you're going to have to be okay with taking a risk. This is really important. Your decision might be a good one or it might be a bad one. More likely, it's not so black and white and your decision will be somewhere in between good and bad. You might not ever find out whether it was a good or bad decision, or you might get quick and scary feedback. In any case, you've got to be okay with taking that risk. It's part of your role as a leader. So let's think through a concrete example to help make this clear. So the product manager in your team, Helen, has had some feedback from one of your company's biggest clients. The client thinks your product is lacking a really critical feature that your competitors' products all have. The client has been pushing on this for months and won't accept the explanation that the feature is actually not in keeping with the ideas behind the product. Adding the feature would, Helen tells you, dramatically change the product and is not in a direction that is in keeping with your current roadmap. Also, it would require a lot of time from almost the whole development team, requiring the team to deprioritize other planned features. The client is saying to Helen, if you don't add this feature, we're going to go with a competitor. Helen wants to tell the client, no, we're not adding the feature, but she wants you to make the decision. One possibility here is that this isn't your call to make. It's a big company-affecting decision. Maybe it's the CTO's decision or the CEO's, but let's imagine the CEO has empowered you with all such decisions, or maybe the CTO's away and you know this really is going to come down to you. Okay, there's a lot you could find out. How long would it take to develop the feature? How many other clients really want it? How big an impact would it really have on the roadmap? And so on. So you get Helen's views on these questions, but you can't necessarily have total confidence in her answers. She might not know the answers, or she might just be telling you what she thinks will get you to agree with her preference. So now you have to make your own decision. You're going to have to take into account a bunch of things that maybe Helen doesn't know. Does this client actually have a history of making these kinds of threats and then not following through? What impact would either decision have on the morale of the development team? How reliant is the company really on this client's business? Would losing them as a client be a disaster or not so bad? You're going to take into account what Helen has told you, plus what you already know, and you're going to listen to your gut. My guess is that in this situation, if your company's healthy and you and your team have good psychological safety, then you're going to put a lot of weight on Helen's view and you're going to agree with her. Either way, the key thing here is to give Helen a confident answer. You don't have to pretend to know something you don't, but you have to show her that you've really made a decision. No hedging. You have to say, here's my decision. And you need Helen to know that you're not going to throw her under the bus if the decision goes wrong. Again, if you have a good relationship built on earned trust, then that should come naturally. But if the relationship is new, it might be that you put the decision in an email to Helen, CCing one or two appropriate people. That way she knows you're not going to pretend to remember the conversation differently. So what happens after you make the decision? Well, Helen will go and implement the decision you've made, and the company and the team will feel its effects. Some people might disagree with the decision and will want to talk to you about it. Whatever the outcome, if it's a big, impactful decision, there'll almost certainly be some people that don't like it, and they'll let you know that if you have good psychological safety. The way you react to that feedback is just as important as the way you made the decision in the first place. You need to be ready to defend your decision, but also acknowledge that it wasn't a decision based on certainty. You had to decide quickly, and given the information available to you, this was the decision you took. At some point, the right thing to say will be to acknowledge that the decision might not have been perfect, but you stand by it. On the other hand, if someone comes to you with a very strong counter-argument, you should listen to them. Maybe they'll change your mind. It might be too late, but if not, it's not a bad thing to change your mind when you get new information. In fact, you should do that. But don't change your mind just because someone's upset about the decision. But if they give you a new perspective on things that tells you something you didn't know when you made the original decision, it's completely reasonable to change your mind. And if it is not too late, great. You can talk to Helen about the new decision. But if it is too late, you can learn from the experience. Maybe this tells you you have a particular blind spot, an area or aspect of work that you need to learn more about. Or maybe it tells you that a particular person is worth consulting on such decisions in future. Okay, I've used an extreme and unlikely example here. The reality is that if a company reaches that situation, there's almost certainly much bigger problems. So in general, you'll have decisions to make that are much lower stakes. And it's important not to artificially increase the stakes. One way that people do this is by thinking something along the lines of, if I make a bad decision, they'll think I'm a bad leader, so my decision has to be perfect. In reality, they'll think you're a bad leader if you sit on the fence and refuse to make decisions. If your decision turns out to have been bad, you can own that mistake and learn from it. If you want advice on how to learn from mistakes and hear about a really huge mistake I made, check out this video here. If you have thoughts or questions about the subject of this video, why not let me know them in the comments below? Did the video make sense? Is there something important I missed out or got wrong? And the same goes if you have any ideas for subjects you'd like to see me cover in future videos. Bye. See you soon.